Hello to my fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Virgo new moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello, Aries Rising. Welcome to your reading for the new moon in Virgo, happening very soon, this Tuesday, the 3rd of September at 11:56 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So on Tuesday, I'd like for you to carve out some time and be specific, get to the nitty-gritty of the devotion to your physical health and to things that sound like acts of service. The 6th house is what we're zoning in on at this new moon, Aries Rising, and it's less glamorous perhaps than some of the other houses. It's less fun and carefree, but there is something essential about it. In the 6th house, we talk about our rhythm. We talk about our commitment to repetition. We talk about the structure, the ecosystem of our physical self, and if everything's in good order or not. And so this new moon is a moment to take stock and also a moment to invest, to start thinking about how you would like this area of your life to develop over time. Now, I missed the last full moon in Aquarius, and I apologize for that. However, it was imperative that I take that moment. I think that my own life was going in a certain rhythm, and I was expanding in different areas, and I was taking on different sorts of modes of responsibility, a lot of physical space, and also other things as well were occurring in my personal life, and the astrology seemed to be emanating in a way that was very literal. There was a pressure with that last full moon that felt about ready to blow. And when I started to think about what was occurring in the zodiac, I started to worry that I was preempting or I was casting a bad omen over my own life. I started to think about it in terms of, well, this is the astrology and how it's working out. How can I be constructive about this in giving that information, and how can I be constructive with myself so as not to be overwhelmed by it? And unfortunately, I think somewhere along the way, I allowed myself to be overwhelmed. Well, I'm telling you this because there's room for us to be overwhelmed. That's okay. But there's also a responsibility in this act of service that I'm engaging in so as not to predict the worst or give over to the current moment. If you're listening to this reading, you are in tune in some way with your own astrology and with the galaxy. And hopefully this rhythm provides you with moments of hope and clarity and relief, not fear and worry and trepidation. And this isn't to say that that's solely the responsibility of how things unfolded in the month of August. Was my preoccupation with it. However, it didn't help. Now that there's been room enough to reflect between now and then, I find it very helpful. And I think about the conflict and the harsh words and the misinformation that the astrology was emanating. And I think about what was occurring in the current climate of time. And I was also thinking about the effects of abuse over time. And so separate to this astrology, there's something really clear that I'd like to make mention of, is that the way that we ingest media has us available and aware of everything at all times. And there's a slant and a skew, though, to that accessibility. And to live a life as, in some form or another, as a minority or as an outsider or as a person that feels in some way that they are powerless. The events of August in popular culture were highly triggering for a lot of us, and it made me really think about the work, the service, the active service that we need to do in order to maintain the health and the happiness of the kids coming up underneath us, the young ones. Because as much as we all have our troubles and we all have our experiences in our life to do with rejection and to do with abuse and to do with violence, verbal and physical, what was so obvious was a pile-on in August that felt like such sheer bullying that I don't want the kids to go through. It's got to end here. The buck must stop here. Everyone has the right to embody their nature. Everybody has the right to identification. Everybody has the right to compete in the skill set that they have trained for all of their lives. Everybody has a right to celebration of achievement too. And so to bring it back to the astrology, I can see that on this day, Monday, the 2nd of September, if I get these out in time, the astrology is showing us an example of what we might be contending with. Because Pluto, the planet that destroys and clears a path and ruins everything that it touches in order to provide space for new growth, Pluto that reveals things that have been hidden for the longest time, is having its last hurrah in the sign of Capricorn, which globally can represent pre-existing power structures and institutions. And so from now until the 20th of November, in our lifetime, this will be the last example that we will have to be scholars and register and then write about in years to come in the way that we can glean what Pluto in the sign Capricorn might mean. You can feel the grip of those old power structures, those old institutions clamoring on for dear life. You can feel the uprising of a popular voice that began as a subculture but now is growing. You can feel the after effect of blatant abuse and discrimination on a global stage, and folks that haven't had to think so much about either their identity or their philosophies around identity had to reconcile with the idea that this is ongoing. Folks have been implicated in this that need not have, and their lives have been put in danger. So what do we do with this information? We recognize that this is all on the basis of a pre-existing power structure coming from a very select privileged few that must be held accountable for their words and their actions. So when it comes to this new moon in Virgo, Aries Rising, I'd like for you to be meticulous with your intelligence. And I'd like you to feel the energy of Mercury moving back into Virgo, back to home base, with a sense of clarity and a sense of purpose. And I would like you to collate your information, and I would like you to work on that intelligence, newfound, in some form of active service. I'd like you to think about the autonomy that you have over your body and how that is a prerequisite for humanity moving forward. It's not a reality right now, we know this, but this is why we show up together. This is why we share this sort of information with one another in the best possible way that we can. We all have different strengths, we all have different capacity energetically. It's obvious that the power imbalance is leading to detriment. Some people believe in helter-skelter chaos. Some people believe in standing true and clear in the intelligence of their conviction, their ethical mind frame. I think that Virgo is a sign that has their ethics firmly in one hand. They know right from wrong. So hopefully we can work with that after the shock of confrontation and the shock of confusion of just ill-informed accusation. We can move forward with a clear mind, and we can call the facts for what they are. Evolve, everyone. We need to evolve. Let's get you some tarot, Aries. Now, after this lunation, it will be eclipse season, the first of which will be a partial lunar eclipse that's going to happen in Pisces. So this is the beginning inkling of a new story of release. And then the final solar eclipse in Libra will occur October 2nd. And so our minds and our hearts may be drawn back to last year, and we may be contending with further conversations or further examinations of injustice. This never goes away. We must always stand up for what is right and what is true. It's the way that we do it that makes the difference. And sometimes when you can hold the ethical fact of the matter in your hand, that can really help. And it's up to everybody else to duke it out. You got some beautiful cards here, Aries Rising. And they're not contradicting me, but they're speaking to a beautiful tone and a beautiful texture that has a lot more to do with our feelings and our emotions. And I think perhaps in some ways I have definitely had to keep those in check over the past, well, I was going to say over the past month, but over the past little while. The emotion or the ability to feel empathy can sometimes be overwhelming. But the ability to love and to connect and to have fun and to care can also be overwhelming too, in the most beautiful way. And so what we're kind of looking at as we move into the rest of the astrology, Mars, your guiding light, is going to come into Cancer. And Cancer and Mars don't really get along. There's an ineffective quality to the bravery or the valor of Mars in Cancer. However, what's your definition of bravery and valor? Does it include some empathy? Does it include some compassion? I hope it does. Mars is going to station retrograde this year too and move back into Leo, back into a fire sign. So there'll be more to review about bravery. But these two cards are here for some purpose. And there's something about communion with those that you love. Perhaps folks that maybe have been kept at arm's length lately just because you're absolutely at capacity. And that's fine. That's okay. That will be respected by people that you love. And you'll probably find that they've been doing the same thing. At this moment, we're looking for a leader, aren't we? It's expected of you to often be the leader, isn't it, Aries Rising? So I wonder if you can be vulnerable in your approach, keep your ethics and your conviction in one hand very, very clearly and very assuredly. And if this moment requires you to act as leader, and if this horoscope or this reading has made you feel the weight of that responsibility, there's power in communion, there's power in numbers, And when people that love each other come together and tend to one another's needs and care for one another, there's a group strength that starts to grow. Nostalgia is one thing, and it can be a lamentation, but there's also clues in there from the good times as to what mind frame or what body frame you were in at that moment. And you can bring that forward into the current time, and you can stand up as leader together. Perhaps there's something about the old power structures and the apex at the very top. The Emperor is staring at me on the desk. This is your major secret in the tarot. But what does this mean to us now? What does this mean to you? Autonomy over oneself, one's body, one's choices, one's identity, and a collective action provides room for multiple leadership. If we work together and cooperate, great things can happen. So let's do it. Great big love to you, Aries Rising. If you're still here with me, can you please put a gold medal in the comments in honor of the champions that walk among us? That would be fantastic. If you would like to support my work, you can put some money in the tip jar over at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. The link is in the description below. If you would like me to draw and read your birth chart for you, you can make your appointment at my website, umaruby.com. I'll be with you in good time to prepare as much as we can for the partial eclipse in Pisces. It will be a moment of just letting it take us and going deep into the watery depths of Pisces. And maybe some of those cups cards were speaking to that too. Get back to something that feels like compassion, Aries Rising. I will too. Hello Leo Rising, welcome to your reading for the Virgo new moon happening this Tuesday, the 3rd of September at 11:56 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So at this time, I would like you to carve out just a little bit of time to really start to think about your autonomy in terms of your ability to finance yourself, and think about your unique talents in this life. These are the topics that your second house speaks to, and this is where the sign Virgo rests on your birth chart. Virgo, the sign, is meticulous in their quest for knowledge and understanding. They're not going to dive into anything that they don't know the moving parts of. And so in contrast to the brightness and the boldness of your first house, there's something that is subtler in its emanation with Virgo. Remember that every single sign of the zodiac has something to do with you. You're not just a Leo, you're not just a Cancer, you're not just a Gemini, you're in fact every single sign. It's just a matter of how the die is cast that makes the difference. And so when speaking about a new moon, the sun, the moon, they come together. There's no moon in the sky that night, so we get a bit of a reprieve or a bit of relief from perhaps some of the more obvious emotions that a full moon can bring up for us, as they did at the last Aquarius full moon, of which I missed out on making horoscopes for because the moment was palpable for me. But perhaps I can sort of guide you through what may have occurred at that last full moon and how that can inform your sense of financial autonomy and your sense of belief in your talents. Now, obviously, the systems of finance are flawed. We know this to be very true, don't we? We are reaping the after effects of ill-conceived structures that do benefit a very select few. And so on that topic, today is the day, Monday the 2nd, hopefully if I get these out in time, that the planet Pluto will move back into Capricorn for one last 2.5 month stint. Pluto takes 248 years to move around the zodiac, and so we'll never experience Pluto in Capricorn again in our lifetime. And so this last 2.5 months, I imagine, will be a real moment of reflection for those of us that have been working with these energies, what we have learned about Pluto, what we have learned about the sign Capricorn in a collective sense. What I come to know of Capricorn is that it can represent institutions, it can represent pre-existing power structures. And we know that Pluto blazes a trail wherever it goes and destroys everything in its path. It's pertinent timing that the last dance of Pluto and Capricorn will occur from September until the 20th November of this year. And so when it comes to pre-existing power structures, when it comes to the vice-like grip of supreme power needing to let go in order to allow new systems to evolve, you don't have to be an astrologer or even interested in any of this stuff to realize that that's possibly what's going on now. You can feel that energy in the air. There's a lot of retaliation and a lot of harking back to the nostalgia of times gone by. And it's a very specific lens that does benefit a very select few. That's the way that our society, as we know it, has been structured. And that's what the new energy is urging and encouraging a shift within. So that last full moon in Aquarius was highlighting your 7th house of your inner sanctum, your nearest and dearest relationships, people that you hold close. There was a spotlight in that area, and it was intense, sharp, nearly exact opposition, square, pressure with the rebel spirit that has been moving through your 10th house of how you're publicly perceived. So if there was a bone of contention or 2 or 3 or 7 to chew with people that you would consider close ones in the way that you're rebelling, revolting, standing up in your public facing self, the astrology has mirrored that. And now, in the after effect of something that might feel like a bit of confusion as well, because Mercury for most of August was retrograde, now Mercury is making their way back into Virgo, back into your 2nd house of your talents, your autonomy financially. So hopefully the information that was confusing and the tense words, in some ways on the global stage, the refusal to apologize when error was highlighted, hopefully Mercury moving back into Virgo in the 5 days after this new moon will provide some sort of sturdier ground for you to start making some plans in your 2nd house, your house of finance, your house of talents, individually, as the bright, sparkling diamond that you are. So that's the astrology of the last moon and why I felt it imperative to lay low, why I was met time and again with all manner of misunderstanding, all manner of boundaries crossed, and why it was very important for me to let it happen. This was on the global stage, and sometimes in my personal life too, there was a great link. I felt in tune with the astrology. I also felt overwhelmed by it. And on that topic, it's my responsibility not to overwhelm myself with the astrology from now on. This work is powerful and it's helpful when it's solutions-based. It's not helpful or powerful when it's a dark omen that rests over us and when we approach a situation with trepidation. Now, that isn't to say that the astrology made the world go cuckoo in August, but it is to say that in the moment of aftermath, it can be a great salve for reflection. So if what I'm saying to you, Leo Rising, is hitting home, I'm glad for that. But I hope that whatever I say isn't an omen of doom, because that's not what the work is for. And I must remind myself that at this stage in my education, it's becoming patently clear that to add to the doom scrolling is a waste of time. What is important and what is nourishing is to be face to face or amidst a very pivotal moment in your life and to feel really conflicted and feel the pressure about to break and to drop back into your physical self and to allow breath and sometimes tears to heal. And then in retrospect to go back to the astrology and say, okay, we're dealing with Saturn and Jupiter as an example. We're dealing with the old guard, the new guard. We're in the mix, in the midst of this fight for supremacy. And that has its effect from the outer to the inner, from the galaxy to our cells in our body. And we know that it's a moment and that things move and they shift and they change again. A great, very wise friend of mine said to me, when you get caught in the rain, you don't become the rain. You wait for it to pass. And I hope that that can stay with you too, Leo Rising. I hope that that's something that is helpful for you at this time. Your brightness and your optimism and your heart space, your center right here, is what we all can rely on and are encouraged by in this life. And hopefully the different signs and their different elemental qualities can provide you with some comfort too, keeping in mind that you are all 12 of these signs. You are all of the planets, all of the asteroids. Everything above us lives inside of you too. You are all welcome here, every facet, every shape, every color, not just the bombastic, glamorous parts. Let's get some tarot. Oh, I feel better already. I hope that you do too in some way. And I hope that you were, and if you weren't feeling, I don't wish for you to be swayed by my emotions either. But hopefully this has provided you with some sense of clarity and comfort if you need it. And by the looks of these tarot cards, there might be something that we can set our weapons down on, because an intellectual sparring match, quite evident in the public discourse at present, the refusal to admit when one is incorrect, when one has gotten the information wrong, ideologies aside, when the actual facts of the matter are incorrect, and a refusal to apologize and a doubling down on what becomes absurdity in the conviction to act from hate, that's the moment where we put down our swords. We step away from those ideologies and we move along. Sometimes in the Five of Swords there's someone collecting the spoils of their war, all of the different swords, but they're not a victor at all. There's something quite pathetic about them. In this image there's someone here who has come to a moment where their colour of their mind and thoughts has been taken from them. It's a confronting image to look at, this version of the Five of Swords. And it does remind me of the different ways that diversity of mind has been subjugated in the past too. We're moving from that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Progress is happening. And I think that Mother Nature is teaching us that we need to include her in that process. Speak to Gaia often with Virgo. Virgo's got 2 feet firmly in the ground, a part of nature in their study. Let's extract our emotional impetus at this time, Leo Rising, not forever, but just at this time. Let's extract the tremors of our water body our compulsion to speak in impassioned tones and from our feelings. And let's err on the side of ethical intelligence. This is something that I wish for folks on the grander stage of life to get in touch with. You can speak to people's emotions. You can also speak to their intelligence too. And this is something that can work. But now feels like the time to extract some of that emotional investment, because it does feel quite tender. And I don't wish for you to be hurt. And I wish for you to stand true in your ethics and your intelligence and your grasp of the truth, of the fact of the matter, impartial to anything. This is the time for it, I think, Leo rising. And hopefully others will follow suit too. This isn't about manipulation. I don't think that our emotions are inherently manipulative. But when you do get a rise out of someone, when speaking to their emotions, for or against them, on purpose, avoiding the truth of the matter, avoiding the fact of it all, that's insincere. So with clarity, we're going to step into our Knight of Swords. We're going to have our ethics in our hand, and we're going to speak with clarity and with conviction and with grace. And hopefully other folks parading their idiocy in front of our eyes will do the same. Thank you, Leo Rising. Thank you for being here with me. If you are still here with me, please put a gold medal in the comments in honor of every champion that walks the earth right now. We honor accomplishment with gold, and it's deserved at this time. If you would like to support my work, Leo Rising, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and you can put some money in the tip jar, or you can subscribe to my channel for $10 Australian a month. I'm going to be refinessing my commitment, so that may change. It may just be a tip jar. But for now, if you feel that you've enjoyed my work thus far and you'd like to contribute, that would be the best way to do it. If you would like to have me draw your birth chart and read it to you, you can make your appointment at umaruby.com. Pick the spirit reading if I've not heard you before. If I have met you before and you'd like another reading with me, you can choose truth, growth, love, femme, or magic. Those are the titles that we're working with. There'll be specific tarot cards to start us off, and then we'll draw cards together as we look at the current climate, current texture of time, and how that relates to your birth chart. Much love to you, Leo Rising. I will speak to you in preparation for the partial lunar eclipse in Pisces that we've got coming up. But until then, take care. Hello, Sagittarius Rising. Welcome to your reading for the Virgo new moon happening very soon, this Tuesday, the 3rd of September at 11:56 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So we're thinking about lunchtime on Tuesday. And we're thinking about carving out a little bit of time to yourself to have a think about your aspirations, to have a think about what it is that you hope to leave behind in this life, to have a think about your work ethic possibly, but to have a think about your body of work might be a better way to put it. Virgo for you rules the 10th house, which is where you're most publicly perceived. It's the very top of the chart. And what I can see from the astrology of this moment, and also tying in the astrology that I missed out on at the last full moon in Aquarius, we're stepping from a moment of very sincere, brittle tension that had something to do with your home base, your root structure, and also your very intimate, near and dear relationships. There was something that felt like a clash. There's something that felt like the old world and the new world coming into some sort of face-off, and an exasperation, perhaps an expulsion of nervous energy or nervous conversation. And we're moving away from that, and we're refocusing into your aspirations. And maybe the two are linked in some way. There may have been something that felt really golden, like an opportunity that you had maybe set aside, or had said to yourself that, oh, it could work, but I'm not so sure if it will work. And there were repercussions in the way that your intimates dealt with that. Now, that's quite a specific reading of this astrology, but what I am describing to you was the T-square between Virgo, Pisces, and Gemini that occurred at that last full moon. Venus being in Virgo, Venus being uncomfortable and nervous in Virgo, not quite having the vivacity that Venus normally has, and Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini. The mutable signs really felt a very strict, sincere traffic jam at the last full moon. And it has something to do with this aspirational world of yours. What do you want to leave behind in this life, Sagittarius Rising? How do you hope to be remembered? That's how I always think about the 10th house. Obviously, it has a lot of connotations towards our career, if that's something that you have. If you have aspirations in that way of succeeding in work and in business. But it doesn't always have to be like that. Not everyone is wired that way. We all do come to some sort of reckoning with our sense of self, though, and with our legacy. And so this is kind of what I'm interested to hear more about. And hopefully this new moon that happens Tuesday afternoon will provide you with a pocket of time where you get to reinstill some confidence in yourself. For all, or the majority of August anyway, Mercury was retrograde and Mercury was adding to the confusion. Perhaps there was crossed wires or mixed messages. Perhaps there was offense that was taken that wasn't meant that way. And now, since the 28th of August, Mercury has stationed direct and is moving forward. So Mercury's journey from Virgo back into Leo is now moving forward back into Virgo again. And while Venus isn't so comfortable in Virgo, Mercury definitely is. And Mercury encourages us as far as our intelligence is concerned, as far as our strategy is concerned. So whatever pipe dream maybe that was contested at the last full moon, hopefully this new moon will provide you with some encouragement to move forward with these ideas. The sun and the moon together at 11 degrees of Virgo speak directly to the 9 of Pentacles card. And so this is the energy that I want you to envisage as you start to imagine or start to think about your grand legacy. You know, and depending obviously at what age you are, that's different for everybody. But look at this individual. They're taking a moment to feel the elements, aren't they? They're taking a moment to smile and to look at the natural world around them, parts of it of which they have cultivated and cared for over time. And they feel really self-assured, and they feel really at peace in their solitude in this moment. They've got not a care in the world because their hard work, as it were, has really paid off. And so if we plant a seed at this new moon with this in mind, I'd like you to consider it as a bit of a long game, because moving into the next lunations that include Pisces and Virgo, we have the company of the dragon. The lunar nodes are shifting into Virgo and Pisces gently, slowly, and surely. In fact, the next lunation in Pisces in 2 weeks is going to be affected by the dragon, who still lingers in Aries, but is close enough to this moon to partially eclipse it. So there's a taste there. Looking at your birth chart again, Sagittarius Rising, there's going to be an influx of extra revelation in terms of your root structure, your home, the place that you call home, and also an absolute necessity to peel back the layers in the way that you consider your legacy, your public-facing self. A lot of people are waking up at the moment and realizing that life is too short and that they don't want to work and work and work and then die at the end from exhaustion. What are we working for? What are we working towards are questions that come up when we think about our 10th house. And I hope that that is encouraging for you. I hope that this moment with this new moon that is not eclipsed will be some good hard gardening work that you get stuck into and prepare for the future, plan for the future. Now, Jupiter being your guiding light and being consistently uncomfortable and kind of like, what's the good word to use? A bit desperate might be a good word to use for Jupiter in Gemini. There's something about a sort of, obviously the expansive quality that we've come to rely on Jupiter for, and the optimism, out of step, out of the neighborhood that they're used to. It feels like overexertion of energy. So perhaps when you think about your relationships and think about who you do hold dear in this life, there may have been a sort of over-examination or second-guessing these relationships, or something attached to your sense of confidence and your sense of optimism that is experiencing some nervousness at this time. And that could have led into some of these lingering thoughts of what will my family think, or what will my people have known me for so long, what will they think if this is what I am going to, take a punt on in my 10th house? This is what I've decided to divest my energy into that's kind of different to what I used to do. There could have been some kind of critical conversations or confusing conversations that occurred with your family or your chosen family around the way that you do resource yourself, or what you're investing so much energy into. Perhaps there were some clunky words that were said that came off as offensive. They weren't meant to be, hopefully. And so now is the time to clear room and make room for reparations, as we can enjoy Mercury re-entering Virgo, this time with clarity of mind. It's an interesting time, and the astrology of the last full moon really played out quite obviously in the world around us. There was a lot of refusal to apologize after ill-spoken words. There was a lot of tension and conflict and abuse that only a select few were privy to, that all of a sudden was brought into a very public forum. And a lot of people that never had to think about these topics really had to examine them. And there's still apologies that are being waited for at this time too. So hopefully that will come up. Hopefully justice won't be eclipsed. Speaking of the Libra solar eclipse coming up. But that's okay, we'll get there in time. Right now, let's focus on this quieter moment. Let's peel back some of the defensiveness that may have gotten us a bit cagey with sharing our aspirations, and let's refocus on them. Let's find the words for them. And if it's a matter of feeling ill-prepared or being accused of being ill-prepared, then let's prepare. You want to be, everyone wants to be, good at something. They want to contribute in some way. They want their work to be held in some kind of regard, and that includes you, Sagittarius, especially includes you. Your optimism is really helpful for so many of us, but with your guiding light being in Gemini and being so far from home and forming these squares with the mutable signs, it does feel like a pushback. We've got to maintain our hope and our faith and our optimism in our sense of self and in our sense of humanity too, I might say. So that's the astrology for the moon. What else can I tell you that's important to know? More things happen. But I think after the real intense friction of the last full moon and that really sincere, pivotal square between the old guard and the new guard, between Jupiter and Saturn, it might be time just to sort of allow that reality to sit with us. The day that I'm releasing these horoscopes, hopefully, which is Monday the 2nd of September, the planet Uranus will have stationed retrograde on the same day as the planet Pluto will enter into Capricorn once more. Now this is interesting for all of us because this is the last time that we will ever experience Pluto in Capricorn again in our lives. Pluto takes 248 years to move around the zodiac, and so it's not often that we experience this in the astrology. This is the ending of this chapter in the astrology. Astrology does teach us that the circle goes round and things move and change and create different forms. But if there's any chapter to be closed in astrological language, this is the chapter closing on Pluto, the lord of the underworld, the one that reveals things that have been hidden and destroys things and clears a path in order for new fertile growth to emerge. This is the last time that this will occur in Capricorn, the sign collectively that can represent pre-existing power structures. Now, like all astrology, for good and for bad, malefic and benefic, not everything is for the greatest good, and not everything is for sinister reasons. But I think culturally we can all really understand and have the language to recognize that a lot of the dominant pre-existing power structures that permeate our culture have really had its day, and they're getting tired and they're getting old, and their desperation is waning, I should say. They're not feigning desperation. They, in fact, are very desperate, but it's waning. Language is a funny thing, sometimes trips me up. You know what I mean. So from the 2nd of September until the 20th of November, let us coast. Let us not be worried about this omen. It's not an omen. It's a reflection. As Chani Nicholas always says, it's an opportunity to look back or have the galaxy acknowledge our lived experience, to try and find meaning in the patterns is what we do with astrology, nothing more, nothing less. And so when it comes to the idea of pre-existing power structures and the abolition of those pre-existing power structures, let's see what happens over the coming months. That criticism can be reframed, I think, at this time, Sagittarius Rising. If it's been said that you are ill-prepared or unprepared, or work in fits and starts, or are too hyper-focused perhaps on your passions, that they're not cultivated enough to be something substantial, take that criticism for what it's worth, because you're moving into a place right now that does feel substantial, that does feel sturdy, and that does have patience attached to it. Young people do work and go and move towards their passions, and passion, fire, is really hypnotizing. People can obsess over it, chase the feeling, chase the moment. It's natural, and it's actually an important part of life. Then there comes a time when we survey the scene and we look at what work needs to be done, and we develop our stamina to complete it. And in that moment, we find something that feels like equilibrium. We find that sort of center point of the many tasks at hand, everything that's required of us. if we can drop into the idea that we are more knowledgeable than we give ourselves credit for, and our lives have seasoned us to a point where we have experience now, then we'll be able to face whatever potential instability or what's the word I'm looking for? Let's say balance. I think because it says balance on that card too. But you know, find that sort of rhythm, that force of nature that keeps you moving forward, but keeps everything, every job done, every task that is required, completed. And you'll be okay. Relate all of that to your 10th house, your legacy, what you're going to leave behind. And layer over that the current phase of life that you're in now, because it's important. It's different for everyone. We all have a life and we all develop at different rhythms, different timings too. I admire the passion of a Sagittarius. I admire the optimism and the can-do attitude. And I also really admire a Sagittarius when they reach a point in their lives where they feel that they've got a handle on it. And that's when the mastery starts to seep in. Fire, earth, air, water, use them all in equal measure. That's your reading, Sagittarius Rising. Thanks for stopping by. If you're still here with me, please put a gold medal in the comments in honor of every champion that walks amongst us right now, against it all. If you would like to support my work, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. There's an option to subscribe, or you can put some money in the tip jar. The link is in the description below. If you would like me to draw your birth chart and read it to you, you can make your appointment via my website, umaruby.com. Pick the spirit reading if we've never met before. I will be with you in good time to prepare as best we can for the partial eclipse that's occurring in Pisces at the next full moon. We know that we just sort of duck for cover. We know that we sort of allow it to roll over us and allow it to have happen, almost in some way that eclipse, that the that the square between Saturn and Jupiter eclipsed the last full moon too. We're kind of ready for the unexpected. We're ready for the revelations to be shown to us. So I look forward to it, and I'll speak to you then.